Night when he talked about Jesus being human. He talks a little bit about that. And I don't think that we realize that Jesus was fully human. And the Bible talks about that. And I don't think that we really grasp that. And I know I didn't. It seems like, we talked about it a little bit last night, like Einstein is dropping in to take the first grade math quiz. Picasso is coming in the third grade class to do some finger painting. We get that kind of idea, sure, God dropped in and became human, but he didn't really break a sweat. And then you start thinking about, well, what about when he was in the garden, right before he died? And he's so consumed by, I wouldn't say necessarily consumed, but everything that's going on is hitting him so hard, and he's so stressed, and he's so sad, and everything that's going on, and the magnitude of what's going on is weighing on him so much that he literally starts sweating blood. And this is actually a medical condition. It does happen. If you get stressed enough, if you get tense enough, you can actually, when you start sweating, you'll sweat blood.
No way.
No joke. That's about as stressed as you can get. And it's not just stress, the anguish and the thought of everything that's going to happen is hitting him so hard that he's sweating blood. If you're not human, that doesn't happen. If you're Einstein coming in to take the quiz, there's nothing that teacher can throw at you in first grade that's going to make Einstein go, this is a hard one. There's nothing they can do. And yet if you're fully human, if Jesus is fully human, he's going to experience what we experience. And he's going to struggle with it, right? But of course, we talked about last night, right? He's able to still not sin while doing that, but it wasn't because he was cheating, right? It wasn't that at all. It wasn't because this was, something super easy and it never, you don't sweat blood if this is a walk in the park for you. You just don't, right? And we talked about his holiness last night and how that was never compromised. And that is what allowed him to go through sinless. It wasn't that he didn't experience pain and sorrow like we do, and we think that he doesn't. And I love the verse that Paul talks about where he says, we do not have a great high priest who cannot sympathize with what we go through, basically. And how often do you go to your pastors, and I think it's different with you guys coming to Kyle and I. That we've been where you guys have been, or at least, aren't going to judge you for being there, and we know people who have, and in some way we've been there. But how many pastors can you go to? And you can start talking it out. And they're like, yeah, no, I've totally been there, And they'll listen to you, and they're not going to berate you. You totally should not have felt that way. I've never thought that way about that. And they can't tell you, oh, this is what I did in this situation, and this helped me out. But if God has been there, then can't he do it? Yeah. We don't have somebody helping us out who really can't help us out because they don't know, because they haven't been there. They can't sympathize with us because they don't really know what that's like. If I've never lost somebody close to me, there's no way that I can sympathize with you on the level that you need when you've lost somebody. It can't happen no matter how hard I try. But that's the thing that the Bible stresses about Jesus' humanity, is that he was fully human. And he can, and he has experienced this, and he can help us. And that's so huge. And one of the first examples that I think about, Matthew 14, 6 through 13. He finds out that his cousin, John the Baptist, has been beheaded, right? And it happened he was, Herod, I believe it was throwing a dinner party, right? And, ends up that his daughter, I think it was, requests John the Baptist.
It was someone was
his wife.
No, it's someone else's
Let's
daughter.
look it up.
It was one of he had someone entertaining him or something
Yeah.
Daughter. And she asked her mother what she want, because he told her he'd give her anything she asked for, and then she asked her mother what she would want.
Yeah.
So John the Baptist's head on a platter.
Yeah, Herod had arrested John, put him in chains, and sent him to prison to placate Herodias, his brother Philip's wife. Herodias' daughter provided the entertainment, dancing for the guests. She swept Herod away, and in his drunken enthusiasm, he promised her on oath anything she wanted. Already coached by her mother, she was ready. Give me, served up on a platter, the head of John the Baptizer. And he had John's head cut off, right? So, it's a dinner thing, basically, whatever you want, I'll give it to you. And she goes, oh, I know what would make my mom happy. Let's have this guy's head on a platter. Yeah, not the kind of person I want to party with, but,
Just good looking. Maybe a little bit. No.
Yeah, all right, yeah, that kind of makes up for it. But after that, it says, when Jesus got the news, he slipped away by boat to an out-of-the-way place by himself. And one verse, and we skip over that. What is it that people tell you when people die? Like, oh, God has a plan, and da-da-da-da-da. And a lot of times, they don't even mourn with you. And you're sitting here mourning and going like, does God really stand back, kind of like they do, and go, you know what, look, no big deal? Because that's what it seems like they're saying, right? They're not crying with you at all. And I think that we get the idea that maybe God doesn't cry with us. Or God sits there and goes, yeah, that totally sucks, but you know what, da-da-da-da. There's some answer, there's some explanation. Regardless of whether there's an answer or explanation, which we're not going to get into at all, this is the God that when he finds out that his cousin is dead, goes away by himself and mourns for a few days. And that's crazy to me, because I never thought of God that way. And yet God is able to sympathize with us when we mourn, when we say, hey, I can't do this, and we're overcome with that grief. Jesus has been there. And he experiences that not just as God, excuse me, not just as God, but as a human being. He experiences that. That's huge to me. We look at him in the garden before he's about to die. And he's talking to the disciples, and he says, will you come and pray with me? And I don't think that request, seeing the given context of the situation where he's about to sweat blood, is like, hey, Justin, really could use some prayer right now. You mind coming and praying with me? Like, if you're wigging out because of everything that you know is going to happen, you want people around you. Think about the toughest times in your life that you go through. You're going to want people with you. It's like, Justin, come on, man, pray with me. I mean, thanks, man. I mean, it's amazing to think that what we experience as human beings, God knows, and God has been through. And that loneliness, can you imagine when you're standing there and they arrest you, and the people that you've spent the last 3 years with just run?
Ooh, that's harsh.
Can you imagine that abandonment? Like the cops show up right now to arrest Justin for running around naked outside, right? Which he has not done yet for those watching on the internet.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Inside joke. Imagine if we all just run. They're like, hey, will one of you guys stand up and tell me that this guy didn't actually do this, that the next door neighbor is making it up, and we all run? What do you do, if you're a kid and your mom or your dad walks out on you? And the feelings of abandonment and loneliness. And it's like, God, you don't understand. Even as God, you don't understand what I go through as a human. He begs to differ. He absolutely does. He's been there. God, this loneliness that I have, do you get it? Because we want somebody to get it. We want, in that moment, we just want somebody to understand. I don't even think we always want answers. I don't even know if we can always handle answers. What we need is somebody to sit with us and go, yeah, Justin, I get you, man.
I love you.
I love you. I do. That's what you need. But do you want that from somebody who you know can't sympathize with you? No way. But Jesus was fully human. And he experienced that. And he experienced that with a heart that we need to have. And that he's willing to sit there with us and cry with us and be with us when we're lonely. Not even just willing, like he wants to. And he has been there. And when it's time to actually talk, he can say, hey, look, here's what helped me. Here's how it should be for you if you want to feel that mended inside of you. And he knows because he's been there. You can't help somebody through their human problems unless you've been there, unless you've walked that road. And he has. And that's huge that when we talk about all of this, Jesus' playfulness and his humor and his generosity, like at some point, before we started talking about all this, God was kind of up in the rafters, isolated from us. And we didn't really see how he related to us. And because of that, you don't really necessarily think that you can have a relationship with that God, and you don't necessarily want the relationship with that God.